This is Seth David for schoolofbookkeeping.com, bringing to you another special screencast. This time we're talking about time management, how to create the gaps you need. Managing your time. It's kind of a big challenge we have, especially as small business owners, but I think it applies to everyone, even if you're an employee working a 9-to-5 job. How do we manage our time? As I explained in the blog post that you're watching this video with, I'd reached a point where I found myself so busy, and I had no idea why. I knew I wasn't wasting time. I knew I wasn't spending my time doing wasteful things. I was busy being productive, but I was busier than I felt I should have been. And quite frankly, the busyness wasn't really translating the way I thought it should into my bank account for somebody who was as busy as I was. The bottom line is I recognized that there wasn't an inefficiency somewhere. I just couldn't figure where it was, because every day I was out working on clients, doing things, billable things, right? So what was wrong? Something was wrong with this picture. For one thing, I was working 7 days a week. I had no personal time, no downtime. And for another thing, like I said, I felt like for somebody as busy as I was, I should have been seeing more money come in every single week. And bottom line, I wanted my weekends back. I wanted to have some downtime. I wanted more time to do things like this, recording videos, and I couldn't figure out where to reclaim the time that I was looking for at first. And then, as I mentioned in the post, it was suggested to me that I keep a daily log of my time. And so, of course, the tool I used for that was Evernote. It's the obvious thing, because I wake up first thing in the morning, I've got my smartphone with me, I've got Evernote right there. And that's the thing. I thought about what tool should I use to do this. Should I just use my calendar? Well, that doesn't really work because my calendar is sort of reserved for actual appointments that I've got. And I thought of a number of other tools that I might use for this purpose, a timesheet, right? But timesheets are really meant for tracking tasks, and the descriptions that we keep in them tend to have to be kept short, right, to describe just a very specific task that we're doing. I needed something that was a little more free form, and that's where Evernote really came in. And I thought it would be valuable to show you exactly what I did, or what I started doing. So over here, I would have notes for, and I would put in the weekday and the date. And the reason I would do that is, as you will see if you start doing this yourself, as the notes begin to show up in a list, it makes it very nice, especially since you'll have them very likely in chronological order, so you'll be able to see the most recent on top. And you can see without having to dig into each note and exactly what day of the week it's for, and of course the date itself. So because the date is a little redundant, the note itself keeps track of when I've created it and when I've last updated it. But still, I found it very handy to have it in the title. So I'll start with today, the day I'm recording this, which happens to be May 3rd, 2000 and it's actually Saturday, May 3rd, 2014. And what I started doing was I would take this note, and the first thing I would do when I woke up was record the time that I woke up. I mean, literally keeping a log of all my activities throughout the day, because I wanted to pinpoint where it was that I was spending the extra time. So I would say woke up, well, I'd put the time in, 6 a.m., woke up and got ready. Okay, then let's say, and it might be feeding the dogs, whatever I did in between, okay? Then 8 a.m., at my desk working. And then I actually started using this as kind of a timesheet. I would actually, right in here, log the client I was working for and start taking notes about what I was doing for that client, which I normally would have done in a timesheet, but I figured as long as I'm doing this, might as well do it all here. What I started to find over time was then at the end of the day, I would section it off with one of these guys. And I started keeping my to-do lists. Right? And in fact, what I wound up doing was I started taking the daily log and putting it down below. And watch this. It just kind of looks cool. By doing it like this, by putting the two sections in here, then I'd put the daily log at the bottom, right? Paste that down, and this is what I love about doing this in Evernote, is it's so free form. And of course, I can double-click it to pop the note out into its own window. It makes it a little easier to work with. Up here, what I started doing was keep putting tasks in, because throughout my day, I think of things that I need to do. Call so-and-so. right? So this way, down here I'm keeping my log going, and up here I'm keeping track of tasks and things that I want to make sure I get done. And then eventually I just started organizing it into things like what I'm going to do next, what needs to be done absolutely today. So I'd have my today section like this, and then come down here and let's just say next. Trying to keep it fairly simple, and again using my check boxes to keep track of project X, project Y, etc. And what this really meant was, at some point, within the next day or so, I want to open up my calendar and schedule an appointment for myself to do this. That's how I get a lot of things done. Is it doesn't necessarily involve me arranging time with a client per se. A lot of times, I get the project in. It's up to me to work on it and get it done. And this is how I do it. Initially, I list it out and say, okay, these are the things. I just remembered something I need to get done. Boom, I put it down here. And then at the beginning of each day, at some point, not the very first thing I do, but something near the beginning of the day, sometime near the beginning of the day, I would start to add things into the list as I get a fleeting thought throughout the day. The beautiful thing about this is I've got it wherever I go because I've got it right here on my smartphone. So no matter what I do, I have access to my notes. And particularly this note. Of course, what I would do is I would tag it, right? So I could tag this today. So that way it was very easy to find. And then tomorrow I remove this tag. And then what I do when tomorrow comes is, let's say, next task. So let's say during this day, I only got this thing done, right? And I've got my log down here, and I can sort of compare the two, and I could see, well, what was I doing throughout my day? Why didn't I get this next task done? Either way, when tomorrow comes, I take the note, okay, and here they've changed the options a little bit, but the answer is copy to notebook, right? And then so it's going to ask me which notebook. So I'll copy it to the same notebook, first notebook. And what's happened is this is now a copy, the one I'm working in. And if I want to be absolutely sure, obviously this is the one I created first. This is the next one. Now over here, I'm going to say this is Sunday, May 4th, right? And of course, anything that was checked off because it came over from the previous day, that can go away now. Don't need it on this note. And now I'm ready to start over with my daily log for this day. And this really helped me. This was a tremendous help to go through this process. It only took a few minutes each morning to go through this process and do it. But it's such a nice way to keep track of everything, because now I can go back and I have a history and I could see, okay, this task did get accomplished on this day, right? And the beautiful thing about this also is I'd also often, and still do often, create a note, a similar note for a specific client. So let's say I'm at client X and I'm working on their stuff that day. In addition to this note, which is my global note of what I did today, I'll have a note for that client, right? So I'll have client X notes for Sunday, May 4th. So let's do that. Let's go new note, client X notes for Sunday, 05/04/14, right? So I've got this, and over here is, in the global note, I might say, I'd have my wake up, 5 a.m., whatever it is. Usually I get up about 4 or 5 a.m. 5 a.m. wake up. 6 a.m. might be admin, catching up on emails, whatever it might be. Then 7 a.m. might be whatever it is, or let's just say by 9 a.m. I'm at the clients, at client X. And now I start taking notes about what I'm doing at that client. But watch this, watch what I can do. So now I want to go over, because really I want to keep the client-specific notes on the note that specifically refers to that client, right? So here's what I can do, and I love this. I can go over here to client X's note, and first of all, this would be in a different notebook for that client, or there's a number of ways, and I'll get into in future videos on Evernote how to, how to organize this stuff a little more specifically. But for now, let's just, regardless of what notebooks it's in, what I can do is over here on the note menu, I can copy the note link. Okay, and let it synchronize the notes. And what that just did is it put a link directly to that note on the clipboard. So over here, 9 a.m. at client X, and then I can paste that note here. So that way, later on when I'm going back through at the end of the month, whatever it is, when I'm looking through my times and what I did and who I did it for, I can click right here and it flips me right over to that note. And if I want to, for that matter, I can sort of link back to it and say global notes for today, right? Just because as notes accumulate, it's not going to be that easy. They're not going to be right next to each other like this. So what I can do is say global notes for today, come over here, note, copy note link. Just a really good organized way of doing things. So now I can easily kind of click back and forth between these two notes, even if they're in completely separate notebooks, you know, and there's a million other notes that I've posted since. Makes it very easy. And the other thing you can do is, like, if let's say I've got this note open, right? Just like in a web browser, I can actually right-click this and say open in a new window. So now I've got both notes open. And I can just kind of keep them in sync in terms of what I want to describe here about what I did that day and what I want to describe that's specific to that client. And you know, the other reason for doing it this way might seem like extra work, but I might want to send this note to the client, or I might want to copy and paste everything in here. And you know, again, what I can do here that I can't do in any kind of timekeeping application, or you know, certainly not in an Excel spreadsheet, is I can keep very, very detailed notes. What else can I do? I can embed a file because it's Evernote. So I can drop an Excel spreadsheet right here on the client's notes for that day. So if there is a sheet I worked on that, you know, for that day that I know I'm going to want to go back to, and I know just knowing the way my brain works that I'm going to want to think of it in terms of when it happened, well, bingo, now I have it. I have it right here, specifically in the context of the day that I worked on it. And of course, because it's Evernote, it'll be searchable. I can put keywords in here. So if I know I'm looking for that file I worked on called cash flow projections, then I would put cash flow projections for 5/4/14. And of course, the Excel file that I embedded would probably be named something similar. So it'd be easy to find. That's the idea. And of course, Evernote's got great search. So once I've got this in place, and I go in and just clicking all notes to make sure I'm showing kind of everything. If I go in here, and I say cash flow, boom, now it goes right to my notes from Sunday, May 4th for that client, for client X, right? Because it found cash flow projections that way. And of course, I'd have my Excel file here. So this is how I ultimately was able to uncover where the inefficiency was that I was looking for. I knew there had to be something. And when I initially looked day to day, it wasn't clear to me right away what was happening and what was taking up all my time. But by doing this day in and day out I started at the beginning of this year, January, February, March. It took me really about 2.5 months before it finally hit me. And I'm going to explain to you in the future exactly what it was that hit me and made me realize this is where the inefficiency is. I'll give you a hint. It had to do with not so much what I was doing, it had to do with when I was doing it. It had to do with the particular times during the week that I realized I was doing things I didn't really want to be doing. And keeping a log like this was instrumental in helping me to figure that out. And there'll be more on this going forward as we roll forward day after day with this series that I'm now doing on time management and value billing and all the like that you'll see me talking about. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.